Hey everybody, it's Joe Gamble back again, and I'm here to talk about the analog cab stem section of the Fryette PLIR. So at its heart, the Fryette Power Load IR is a tunable reactive load. And what that means is we can take our big badass tube amplifiers that are normally too much to be played at comfortable volumes without killing small birds and harming children. And instead we can plug it into this box, knock the volume down, and send the line out to either a mixer or your computer for recording. For those of you who are familiar with the Fryette Power Station series, you'll recognize some of the same controls on the front panel of the PLIR. These switches on the far left-hand side of the unit adjust the reactive load portion of the power load, just the same as they do in the power station. These controls tune the high and low frequencies of the reactive load, which is mimicking the response of your amplifier played into a speaker. So in addition to its uses as an advanced attenuation product, the PLIR also brings on board the ability to A, run the dry full range analog output of your amplifier just at a line level out to your mixer or your DAW. B, we can run that signal through the onboard IR loader, in which we can use the included impulse responses, or you can load your own. Or C, we can use the onboard analog cab sim that we're talking about today. And kind of the way it works, the analog cab sim sort of sits conceptually between, well, maybe not conceptually, but sonically between that wide open DI kind of characteristic that we'll get from the pure analog out and the totally filtered sort of flavor that we'll get from using the IRs, which are completely emulating the sound of your amplifier being plugged into a speaker and the speaker being mounted in cabinets. All right, so to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to play the same exact riff 3 different times, and we'll play it once through the analog, like the pure analog out, and then we'll play it through the analog cab sim, and then we'll play it through the IR loader, so we can start to get, you know, some basic distinctions together for how each of the 3 modes kind of sounds. Okay, so I'm going to play this filthy Nash Strat into a D120 head, kind of have it set up for sort of a crunchy tone, and I'm going to play this riff. This first time it's completely DI, so no filtering whatsoever. So it's just the amp level getting knocked down to line level, it's going into the computer, and it sounds like this. Okay, so now we're going to engage the analog cab sim, so we get a little bit of filtering going, and it's going to sound like this. Okay, and now we're going to listen to it with the IRs engaged. So the full range analog out, probably the way most people will use that is to take the line level signal of their amplifier and feed it into their DAW and load up IRs within that environment, which is a great way to work. I did that for many years. I would run my amplifier into the power station, which would knock the volume down, then I'd take the line out of that into my interface, and then I'd just load up IRs within Logic. Because, you know, that that full-on DI kind of sound isn't necessarily the most pleasing way to present your sound. So predictably, how most people will use the PLIR when they get it home is you'll just use the onboard IRs because they sound so good, and you'll just use them in good health for many years and cut a bunch of great tracks, and maybe never get around to exploring what the analog cab sim has to offer. So we want to look at that a little bit right now and explain its functionality in as succinct a manner as possible. Okay, so we're looking at the front panel of the PLIR, in particular the bottom row, because that's where the analog cab sim controls reside. It is super easy and intuitive to use. We're going to go knob and switch by switch and talk about what they do. So the analog level, this is basically the signal level that's being routed to the analog 2 output jack on the back of the unit. So if we're actually engaging the analog cab sim, and we do so by this center switch, out means we're sending DI signal to the analog 2 jack in the back. And again, we're probably only doing that if we want to send the DI signal to our DAW to be processed within that environment, like using IRs within our DAW, right? But for this purpose, we're going to engage the analog cab sim. We're sending the level of the analog cab sim out through the analog 2 jack in the back. So we have a level control for that. Then we have a little phase switch here. So 0 or 180 switch, we're flipping the phase of the audio signal 180 degrees, should you need to do so. And then we're moving to the low-mid control. All of these frequency controls are plus minus 12 dB. So this first one, the low-mid, I'm just going to dump everything out, and you can hear what? Here's flat in the middle. And then we're going to get real speakery, real boxy when we go to the higher ranges. So there's like a ton of control here. Real pleasing musical examples. Right? So that's the low-mid control. As I stated, here's the in and out switch in the middle. And we have the high-mid control, same thing, plus or minus 12 dB. This is flat in the center. Here's with everything dumped. Man, that's nice. Flat, and then here's all the way up. So lots of nice bark available there. Moving on to the air and the bite control. This is kind of interesting. This is where Steve is kind of thinking in terms of microphone simulation and microphone placement a little bit. So with the switch out, we're using the bite function, and the bite is it's going to be a little more pronounced top end because it's more like he's thinking having the mic on axis, like straight on. Facing the speaker. So it's going to accentuate the upper mid frequencies here. It's very subtle. And then if we engage the air function, it's going to be a little more open sounding, emphasizing some of the higher frequencies rather than the upper mids. This is going to be more of like an off axis, you know, when you pitch the mic a little bit and you get some more air in there. Now this works nicely in conjunction with this emphasis knob, and to me, I look at the emphasis as more like a presence control, like a super high-end detail kind of control. So I'm going to dump it all the way down. We'll bring it up. All the way up, you really hear a lot of that super high-end detail in the strings there. So there you go. Them's as the controls. So when talking to Steve Fryette about the conceptual differences between playing through the analog cab sim and the IR loader, he was saying that playing through IRs is akin to like sitting in the control room of a studio and your amp's out in the other room and it's mic'd up and it's running through mic pre's and you're hearing it back through monitors. And it's just a really nice controlled situation that you're used to, and it sounds like, you know, guitar sounds on a million records that you've already heard. Whereas playing through the analog cab sim is like sitting in front of your amplifier and your cabinet with no filtering whatsoever. So the playing experience is like super immediate and like all up in your face, which is a really cool thing to experiment with and play around with. Like sonically, I would say that it's sitting directly between what you get from a full range analog out, that kind of DI characteristic with all the frequency spectrum, right? It's sitting between that and the IR experience, which is like completely filtered because that's supposed to sound like, you know, guitar speakers and cabs and stuff. So if you think about it that way, the analog cab sim is sitting between that, so you get a lot more to work with than you would with the IRs, because IRs are filtering a lot of that out. But we're not necessarily used to hearing that all the time with guitar tones. So probably at first blush, when you play through the analog cab sim, you'll find that like its forte is cleanish, like up to breakup kind of tones. And it's maybe not the best conduit for like distorted stuff, higher gain stuff, singing leads, because with distortion, with gain, the top end gets crispy really fast, and depending on your tolerance levels for that, you may or may not dig it. But you know, that's all up to you. You don't need to listen to my standards for what's tonally acceptable. You know, go forge your own path, which is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to keep the amp settings the same. I'm going to fiddle around with the analog cab sim and play some music and hopefully get something cool happening on the cleaner side of things. And let's have some fun, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, that'll do it for this presentation of the analog cab sim portion of the PLIR. Sure hope it piqued your interest and made you think twice about diving in and creating your own tones with this thing, and would love to hear the results. But otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope it was enjoyable. See you in the next video. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers!